Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar with a great guest today with Michael Rubin from the band King Falcon. And I want to give a quick shout out to John Bleischer for hooking us up. John, I appreciate you always bringing me some really great guests, and thank you very much for your support. Michael's a primary songwriter, vocalist, and guitarist of the New York City rock trio King Falcon. He and bassist, he and the original bassist James Turnover began playing together when they were 12 and 15 years old. The band recently released their first album called King Falcon. Great album. And man, your videos were really, I want to have some questions about that, but it was shocking to see videos like that. You don't see videos like that anymore. Everything's like AI or just hanging out in a room. That was really cool. I mean, especially being from New York City, I really enjoyed seeing that. But
thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Craig, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to be here with a fellow guitar player. And I'm excited to admire your guitar collection back there, man. You got some greatest hits. You got the 335, you got the Strat, the Paul, the SG. What more do you need?
Honestly, I'm very blessed with my guitars, man. I'm really quite happy. And I play them all. I'm not like a collector. I don't collect stuff. So, but talk about, you have a good story. You started playing guitar, Mike, from the video game Guitar Hero. Come to life. Talk about that story. It's fun.
It's funny. It almost sounds made up, but it is true. I was playing Guitar Hero one day, and I don't know, I must have been like 8 or 9 years old, and my dad walked in, and he was like, how about you just grow up and play real guitar and quit being a loser? And that's pretty much exactly how it happened. So I got a guitar for my 10th birthday from my grandpa. It was a Korean Telecaster knockoff. It was a thin line telly. The crazy part is that it was semi-hollow, but it was like 12 pounds. So just the heaviest guitar. And I was this little kid with like a heavy Telecaster. Anyway, I loved that thing. It had 2 P90s. Anyway, I was a student at School of Rock for a while. And then I worked at School of Rock and kind of had a lot of my roots there. But I also got a lot of my chops playing in jams around New York City. So the one that I got started at was like the Bitter End jam.
And sure, man. I used to go there all the time.
Well, you know, it's Monday night at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I was I was the only 13-year-old kid there Monday night, 1 o'clock in the morning. And everybody was like, don't you have school tomorrow? But this is my life. So I would always just kind of do stuff like that and put music first. And I will say, I mean, I always did all right in school, but my focus was always the music and doing all that. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of been like a whole life thing for me, but it did start just from me playing Guitar Hero and my dad saying, how about you just pick up a real one?
That's so cool. So your parents, I would assume, have been extremely supportive of your career.
Yeah, they've been amazingly supportive, and they're sometimes they're really cool. I know some people begrudge to say that their parents are cool, but the one thing that I've been very fortunate of is that when it comes to music, they're very supportive. And actually, my mom is after I graduated School of Rock, she owns and operates a couple of School of Rocks now. So she just believed so heartedly in it that she is kind of helping teach and things.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's cool, man. That's good. Well, that's a great start. So your first band, you're just a teenager. You wind up playing South by Southwest in Austin and the 2020 NAMM convention in Anaheim, which I was there. Did you get sick after that? Dude, I was sick as a dog.
You know what? I kind of always get sick. I don't even remember. You probably can hear I have a little bit of a sinus infection now. I probably.
It was like bad.
I got COVID 4 times, man. Vaccine or not, doesn't matter. I always get sick.
Wow, you probably have good immunity at this point.
I think I have bad immunity, if anything.
So how did you get those gigs as a teenager? South by Southwest and NAMM, that's like an amazingly encouraging start.
Yeah, well, so the thing about, that band was called the Inoculated Canaries. We'll get to that in a minute. Worst band name of all time. But the thing that it did for us is that it was so weird that when people saw the word inoculated, they would know it was us.
Right.
So we were on the radio in a couple states. I mean, the first time that I noticed that we started to have a little bit of success with that band was we played a gig in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and it was on the beach, right?
Right.
And I wasn't really expecting anything. There was 350 people there, and it was like, I mean, as far as you could see, because it was a small section of the beach. And right before we started the show, people came running up to us, and they were like, oh my God, did we miss it? We heard you guys on the radio. We drove 2 hours to get here. And they like knew our songs and all that. And I was like, holy crap, we're like really doing something here. So that band kind of started to pick up some momentum, but we hit a ceiling. And the reason that we hit a ceiling, there's two. Number one is that we were a live band. So a lot of the music that you hear on the radio, there's a lot of production, there's a lot of synthesizers, there's a lot of like, just like ear candy stuff that's in there. And we weren't doing that. When we did all of the Canaries records, it was the boys are in the room, we set up the mics, we record what it sounds like, and then that's it. You mix it and you roll. Just like how they did it back in the day.
Old school, yeah.
But sonically, that didn't have the same depth, thickness, and impact as stuff that was produced in a more modern way. So you're competing with stuff that just sounds way louder. That's number one.
Right.
The second thing was that nobody knew how to spell inoculated. That was a big problem. So with King Falcon, the Inoculated Canaries actually still has some fans. I was at a bar the other day, and somebody came running up to me, and they were like, "You look familiar. Were you in the band the Inoculated Canaries?" It was crazy.
That is crazy, man. Holy
we didn't
shit.
want to kill off the Canaries, although in effect they're killed because we haven't really played any gigs. But when we started King Falcon, and I say James was also in the Canaries with me.
Okay.
When we started King Falcon, we wanted to keep the bird idea in case anybody looked back and was like, "Hey, they both bird bands." But we wanted something that was a little bit cooler and a little bit more slick, And
easy to spell.
Yes, easy to spell. And also, I kind of figured that we were kids when we started the Canaries, and that's like a small bird. And now we're serious about this, and the falcon is a predator bird.
Sure.
So,
that made sense.
We mean business, and we're here. So that's kind of how King Falcon got its start.
Very cool, man. This is a good story. But how did you get the gigs in Anaheim, though? And how did you get those gigs? I
mean, we just kind of had so much momentum that it was no big deal reaching out. And getting the gig, yeah. I mean, South by Southwest is it's an interesting festival because it's not like there's a big stage that you go play at.
Right.
So it's a lot of local bars and things, so it's a lot easier to get a gig for sure.
Okay.
But I mean, we got a pretty good gig and it was sold out. And as far as NAMM goes, I've had a couple of endorsements throughout my time. I've had a Fender endorsement. I've had an endorsement from ESP. But the endorsement that actually got me to NAMM was an endorsement from a company called Michael Kelly Guitars.
Yeah.
Friend of mine. You know Steve Paisani? Yeah. So
I don't know Steve, but I know the guy who used to own the company.
Okay.
Tracy was his name.
Yeah, he sold it to Steve.
Right.
So I went kind of on behalf of Steve, who is a friend of mine, and he got us the gig, and it was great. But yeah, I mean,
that's cool.
All that stuff kind of happens when you have momentum, and
that's awesome, man. That's great. Great experience, man. So then the Canaries break up. You decide to go in a different direction musically. And so you form King Falcon. You put a great track together and an amazing video. We're going to have some questions for you, but it's called When the Party's Over. I mean, let's talk about the video first. First of all, the song was great.
Thank you.
How the hell did you manage to get Times Square like completely empty? I mean, unless you block stuff out.
Sorry, hang on. I got a phone call in the middle of this, and I think the recording restarted.
No, you're fine.
Okay,
no,
cool.
You're fine. You're totally fine.
Okay, great. So we could only film that video because of COVID. So that was middle of coronavirus, middle of the whole world being shut down. We put together a team of people. One was my cousin, who is he's a director and producer and kind of just like knows a whole lot of people. He got us in touch with the guy who actually directed it, Oliver Warren, who I should say is a mastermind genius of all sorts. I mean, the guy is an amazing, just like storyteller, and he has a great vision for the shot. He's the kind of guy who put together the idea really for what the video looked like and what those visuals were going to be. But the only way we were able to do that was guerrilla video style. I mean, we rolled out at 2:00 in the morning in the middle of COVID, and we were just right in Times Square. And the funny thing is, the final shot, it's me kind of walking away into the distance with the guitar behind my back and the sun's coming up. We shot that at about 5:30 in the morning, 1 block off of Times Square. And we had to do the take 3 or 4 times because I guess I just wasn't walking right. And there was a cop who came around, and I thought he was about to stop us, but he held up traffic just enough time for us to get that last shot.
Oh, that's so cool.
We all went home and had a good sleep after a long night of work. But yeah, it was COVID. It was right in the middle of the night, and I don't think that we can ever do that video again. And I think that's why it was so important for us to do it. Because there's only one shot that you're going to get to do something like that without $1 billion budget. And I'm glad that we did it.
How's that video giving you any traction? Has anything come out of that? Because it's a really
So
good video.
that video got us our record deal. That is the video.
Oh man,
deal. So
awesome.
Shake 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 came out, and that's a cool song, but it was the very first song that we ever even wrote. I mean, there wasn't even like we tried writing songs and then we didn't like it and then it was shit. I mean, King Falcon was the name. Next day, it's like, let's write a song and Shake Shake Shake. I mean, that was the first thing that we ever did. And then after that, we were like, okay, we really need to do something that's going to kind of push the boundary. And so I'll tell you what When the Party's Over is about, because the video and what the song ended up becoming are kind of different from what the original song was about. When the Party's Over eventually ended up becoming about COVID and like this whole life of partying that we've had, meaning like just letting shit fly free. You know, everybody's at the club hanging out, whatever, and then now it's like if there's 5 people in a room together and it's your family, like someone's probably gonna drop dead. You know, that was the feeling that everybody had, kind of like pre 9/11 versus post 9/11 flying.
Yeah.
The party was absolutely over. You know, so every generation has one big event that happens where it's like, oh, shit just got real, and now we all need to kind of reassess. I think ours is COVID, but generationally, that's the thing. That's what the song became about. But the song was actually originally about one of my students who overdosed on heroin and died. And he was at a party, and where do we go when the party's over? Because it was in his mom. He was 15 years old. He was in his mom's basement. And his mom found him the next day. And it was crazy because I had a lesson with him on Saturday and I went to the funeral on a Wednesday. And it was crazy.
Wow. Was it the first funeral you probably have been to? Hey guys, if you're a musician, composer, artist, or songwriter, and you've always thought about or wanted to get involved in the profitable world of music licensing, but you just don't know how to go about doing it, then listen up. A new video has just been released that shows you exactly what music licensing is, how to get involved with it, and how to make your first placement. Or if you've already made some placements, you'll also discover how to create a system that lets you make more placements more consistently. This free training video is called Where the Money's Hiding in the Music Business, and you can find it online at musicreboot.com. This video shows you how to create the financial stability you've always wanted and how to take advantage of the current explosion of opportunities in music licensing due to streaming and the internet. So check it out online now at musicreboot.com.
Definitely first funeral for somebody young. I mean, I've seen, you know, like I went to my great grandma's funeral and great grandpa and things like that. But seeing somebody who was younger than me in the casket was tough.
Yeah.
And I didn't write the song immediately. I mean, it took a couple years. It's not like, you know, because you got to process something like that. You know, you can't just like go home and like, oh, I'm going to write a song about it. Like, no, you got to marinate on it a little bit because it's tough. But that's what the song was originally about. And I remember I showed it to our producer at the time, and he was like, that's great, but we got to turn it down so that everybody doesn't get real sad when they hear it. And then COVID happened, and then we kind of changed the meaning of the song a little bit. But that original chorus idea comes from that. Just didn't want to make everybody cry at shows. So maybe someday I'll revisit it. But I do have an original set of lyrics that are much more dark written down somewhere.
It's a really happy track too. That's the thing. Like I would imagine when you play that, everybody's like dancing and like singing the lyrics or something. It's
that's another thing that I really like in music. I think so. One of my favorite bands is Pink Floyd. I see you're a Pink Floyd.
Huge.
And I think one of the things that they do well is this juxtaposition between music that sounds one way and lyrics that are another way. Yes. You know, music that's bright and uplifting, but like, you know,
Roger Waters.
No. Yeah, exactly. Roger Waters' whole thing.
Yeah.
So I was always influenced by that. Always influenced by David Gilmour's guitar playing. He was probably the guitar player I stole most from.
Yeah.
And I'll admit that 100%. He's incredible. I don't have to sell you on that.
No, he's my number one. I always has been since I was, you know, your age, younger than you.
He's the guy. He's the man.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I just think it's ironic that Jim Irsay owns his guitar.
I know the black
looking
strap.
Back on all the songs, Big Man, Pig Man, haha, Shirar. Now the richest guy in the whole fucking world owns his guitar.
Oh, right, it is very ironic. That's a good. No, this is the Wild West, man. You can say whatever the hell you want. No, please, absolutely feel free. Wow. What guitar in the When the Party's Over video, what guitar were you playing? It kind of looked like a sort of like a Brian May
Oh man,
guitar
so I don't
almost.
have it on the wall behind me. I have it downstairs, but I found it on Reverb. And crazy story. So it's a 1973 Jolana Rubin, and it was made in Czechoslovakia. There's only a couple hundred of them, but mine was modified by a guy named Peter Malinowski. Peter Malinowski is a custom guitar builder, and when I was a kid, I was crazy about his stuff. But he kind of, I don't want to say he stopped building, but the guitars that he makes now are a little bit more reserved than the ones that he used to make. I mean, he used to make like art pieces. But I saw that this one was for sale from him, and it literally had my name on it because my last name is Rubin.
Yeah.
And it was on the headstock of the guitar. So it felt like it was a custom guitar made just for me.
Sure.
And I wanted, like, I have a lot of Gibsons and Fenders and things like that. I'm clearly a big guitar.
You are a collector.
55 guitars at this point, but I use all of them. Well,
wow.
I paired it back to 55. I've been doing this for about 10 years, man. I think I had about 85 guitars at my peak.
Oh my God.
So yeah,
well, good for you, man.
Pull it back a little bit, but with this video, I didn't want it to be about anything flashy out, and I wanted a guitar that kind of intentionally didn't have like a brand name on it because this is a serious video, and it's not like, hey, look at me and all my fancy guitars. Don't get me wrong, some videos are, hey, look at me and my fancy guitars, but not that one. So I wanted a guitar that kind of just had my name on it and just was a guitar, you know, and would have people not focusing so much on what brand it is or whatever, and just kind of taking in the video and the message.
Only a true guitar collector would be thinking that deep about this, which is great. I understand it totally. It makes a ton of sense.
On the topic of being a true guitar nerd, so I was in a movie once, very exciting, I know, but I played Ace Frehley in a movie called Spinning Gold. And
that's wild.
They wanted me to do it because I would get the hands right and actually play guitar. And they gave me the wrong guitars for one scene. There was two guitars. There was a faded Les Paul burst and an unfaded burst. And they wanted me to use the faded one for the chronologically early shots and the unfaded one for the chronologically late shots, which makes no sense because the guitar would technically fade over time. Now, the reason is because the first shot early on in Kiss's career is when they're playing in the hotel and the sprinklers go off. And the unfaded guitar was a legit custom shop Les Paul that they didn't want me to get wet. Now, me, being the guy I was, insisted that that's the guitar that we use for that. So I know that there's a Les Paul somewhere with water damage because of my fault. But funny. I want every Kiss fan who watches this to know that I did it so that it was more authentic.
What was the name of that movie?
Spinning Gold. It's about Casablanca Records and the Bogart family.
How the hell did you get cast in that?
When you're on a record label, sometimes you get weird phone calls.
That's crazy.
I got a phone call from somebody at the label at, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm in my pajamas, whatever, because, you know, rock stars go to bed at reasonable hours. Yeah, he calls me up, and he's like, hey, man, you know how to play any Kiss songs? I'm like, I guess I could figure it out. Send me a video. Cool. So I sent him a 2-second video. Next thing I know, the director of the movie's calling me, and he's like, oh, we got a spot for you. And I don't know who this guy is. I don't know anything. I show up at the filming, like Jay Farrow's there, like the guy. Have you seen The Sopranos?
Yeah, of course.
The guy who played Big Pussy is in that as well.
Oh my God.
Just like a whole bunch of big actors. And I'm like, how did I I had a trailer. Like, I didn't even have any lines. It was crazy.
That's wild. It's called Spinning Gold. Is that on?
Spinning Gold,
like,
yeah.
Is it on like? I'm assuming it's on like Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon or something. You
can get it on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
If you want to watch it there.
That's cool. Did you
movie.
Get to meet any of the band members or Ace?
Of Kiss, no. None of those guys showed up, but I did get to hang out with everybody who was on set, and they were all very cool. I gotta say, Jay Farrow is one of the absolute nicest guys. He even followed me back on Instagram, which was pretty cool. I don't know if he's still doing it, but yeah, it was cool.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. Congratulations. So what is that? I want to go back to that guitar a second, that Jolana Rubin. What does it sound like? What's the closest guitar it might sound like?
Structurally, it's basically an ES330. So it's fully hollow and it has two P90s. However, it has a bolt-on neck. So it's a little bit snappier, kind of like a Fender. So if you could imagine an ES330 with a bolt-on neck, that's basically what it is. So, I mean, it's full and it's woody, but it's not quite as dark because it has a bolt-on neck. And it's a maple neck like a Fender.
Okay. That's interesting. I've never seen it, but it was an interesting guitar. I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, and if you look up what they look like, they normally look totally different than mine. The P90s in mine were made by Peter Malinowski. They normally come with some weird Russian-ish pickups, and if you've ever played one of those Soviet guitars from that era, they sound like garbage. They're very low output, but it's kind of because they couldn't import American guitars. But I know the Russian people wanted to rock and roll. I could say
Yeah.
my people because my dad is from Russia, even though I know there's a lot of shit going on with Russia right now, and I don't necessarily agree with it. But my family is from Russia. But not to get political, I mean it's really sad what's going on. But
There's so much
the one thing
sad
we can
shit
take
going on
solace
now.
in is that the Russians make pretty shitty guitars.
They make good tubes, apparently. They're the only ones who make tubes, I think, or anywhere
Yes, I meant
nowadays.
China. But now I think you can't even really get the Russian
I
tubes
read
anymore.
that recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about, you said the video got you your contract. Talk about how that came about, because I thought you had some great hustle making that happen.
So if you just look at King Falcon, it looks like we didn't do a whole lot before we got the record deal. We put out one song, and then we filmed that one video, and then we got a record deal. But it's also based on the 10 years of work that came from the Canaries before it. So a record company sees that, and they see how much you've moved it, and then they see this shiny new thing with a lot of potential, and they were really excited about it. And the other thing that worked for us in our favor is because of COVID, we did not meet in person one single person from the label until after the record was mixed and mastered, which is crazy to think about. So the first time that they saw us play live, the album was done. So, I mean, expectations were set, and it was us in a room with just the president of the label sitting there with a notebook, and he was like, okay, play. Crazy,
That is crazy.
You want to talk about nerves, man? Once I survived that, I felt like I could pretty much survive anything. Like if a bear was coming at me in the woods, I could take this guy, no problem, So that was one of those moments. But a lot of it was because of COVID, and they had to take a risk because nobody knew how long it was going to be. Nobody knew when we were going to be able to see bands again. But if record companies don't sign young bands, they don't make any money. And then there are no more record companies. So they had to sign somebody, and we were the ones that were still out there doing something.
Talk about how you got the record over to them. Made it happen.
What do you mean?
Didn't you market the record or the video? You actively promoted it, didn't you, to get it?
No, so When the Party's Over didn't come out until we had already been signed. Only Shake.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So we basically had a little press kit that we sent out to a couple of labels, but the one that I was really looking at was Mascot, which is the ones who ended up signing us, because Mascot is a guitar label. I mean, they have Kenny Wayne Shepherd, they've got POD, Crowbot. I think they used to have Eric Johnson. I mean, it's just guitar player, guitar. They do Joe Bonamassa's European stuff. I mean, it's just all guitar. So we sent them that, and I'm telling you, as soon as they got that video, after we had reached out to them a couple times, the video happened. Next day, we had a contract. It was
that's amazing.
That fast. So sometimes all you need is just one really, really good piece of content that somebody believes in, and then they see the vision. So shout out to Ron Berman. He's the president of the label. Thanks for believing in King Falcon, my man.
But also it took, I give you credit for doing the outreach. People, all the time are especially nowadays, because there's not a lot of labels, and they're like, well, what do I do with this thing? But you did something with it. You made it happen. So pat on your back, man. Let's talk about a couple of tracks I really enjoyed off the record. Everybody's Down. I thought it was a great song to open the album with. Catchy, upbeat track. The lyrics, I was curious, is it about not particularly liking who you are or who you used to be and the difficulty of overcoming that, or because it was good lyrics?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, but it's about a couple things. It's mostly about myself. That's the song it's the first song on the record, and it's kind of like our introduction to the world, and it's my introduction about myself. So I grew up in Catholic school, and not to say that there's anything wrong with religion or whatever, but Catholic school is usually very oppressive. So I was the only kid that had long hair, and I always got ridiculed for it. I was the only kid that was into rock and roll, and I was just very much a standout by myself. I would always question why we had to wear the stupid uniforms and things like that, and just I don't know, just like a rowdy kid in a Catholic school. You can imagine that. And I always felt kind of excommunicated, and I always felt like I never found my crowd. And that never happened until I fully devoted myself to music. And that's what the song is about. What the song is about is, even though everybody tells you, hey, music is a stupid idea, you should go do finance instead. Or, you know, being an artist is not like somebody who paints, you know, that's done. Or being a sculptor, or, you know what, if you just believe in anything, if you want to be the world's biggest bottle cap collector and you want to have every single bottle cap because that's important to you, then you got to just fucking go out there and do it, no matter who says it's weird or who says it ain't right, because it's your life and you only get one of them. So, you know, everybody's down, but everything is coming back around if you let it. You know, that's the chorus. That's the idea. So, yeah, I mean, I really kind of have always lived that, which is, you know, being an outcast because your beliefs are not exactly what everybody else believes, but that's what makes you interesting, and that's how you really be the change you want to see in the world. Change doesn't come without some resistance, and resistance creates heat, and you got to just live with it. So
let me ask you this: I really have a lot of respect for you that's your mindset at the age you're at. That's really cool. Where did that come from, and like, how did you get so confident in that?
So I want to chalk it up to two things. Number one, I want to chalk it up to my parents being entrepreneurs. And
okay, that makes sense.
I have seen them in building businesses from, like, so my dad came here from Russia and he tells me all the time, his family had $20, they had a chessboard, and he had a teddy bear. And that was it. You know, so he came here, and he was an 8-year-old kid. He came here with nothing and not being able to speak the language. So he had to build everything that he had from absolutely nothing. And my mom kind of the same way too. You know, her whole life, she wanted to be a lawyer, and everybody wouldn't let her because she was a woman. And she freaking did it. You know, she wanted to run the School of Rock, and everybody was like, oh, having a woman run School of Rock. Now she runs more School of Rocks than anybody else in the whole world. You know, so just seeing the two of them constantly be met with no from the world and go, that's your problem, not mine.
Yeah.
That's really what inspired me with King Falcon, because that's the hardest part about being in a band. You know, everybody thinks that you're going to be in a band with like your buds from when you're kids, and you're going to just ride off into the sunset and have a hit record, make a whole bunch of money. And that's not how it is.
No, not at all.
Failure after people saying no, after people slamming the door in your face, after people hearing the demo and going, I don't see it, every single time. And if you let even one of those take you down, that's it. You spend the rest of your life thinking, man, I should have done this. I should have done this, as opposed to just like dying trying. You know, like, that's really how I believe in it. And that's the only way that you can commit yourself to this life, because it's a life of being a carny. You know, you drive around in the van with all your other little clowns, and you put on the show from city to city. And if you're not ready for that, go be an accountant.
Yeah. Man, I give you a lot of props for that. But serious, man, really good. I'm so nice to hear that, man. And I bet on you for sure.
I appreciate that, man. And I think anybody else who has that mindset is unstoppable. Nothing is scarier than a person who won't take no for an answer.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to write that down. I might put that on your thumbnail. You have a track on there called Go On. Really nice blues rock ballad, which I love. Are you playing slide on there, or is that an acoustic guitar?
No, so I have the guitar with me. I can show you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
So this is one of my favorites. It is this guitar right here. So it is a 1946 Harmony Monterey. And the cool thing about the 45-46 model is that this bridge piece and all the other little trimmings are made of wood. And that's because there was a metal shortage from all the metal going toward the World War II effort. So all of the other models, like I think end of 46 on, have metal pieces, but only the first kind of year and a half of these guitars have that. And I bought this from an old guy on Reverb. And after we finished recording the album, I sent it to him, and he was so happy to hear about it. He's like, man, I'm so happy the guitar is still being used. And
that's really that was
cool.
nice of you to do. It was like good promo, but it was nice of you to do that. That's really sweet.
Yeah, I feel that way about guitars. They're more than just things, you know, they're the stories that we put on them our whole lives. And if you'll let me, I have one guitar story that is like closest to my heart. So sure. I got a lot of fancy guitars, as you can see, but the one that is most special to me is It's a refinished 1957 Stratocaster, and I've had kind of like a 10-year-long story with that guitar. With the Canaries, I must have been about 12 years old. A guy comes up to me. We're playing in a church parking lot because like my grandpa got us the gig or whatever, you know. And this old guy comes up to me, an old Italian guy. He's like, hey, and it's thick accent, which I'm not going to try to replicate, but he's like, hey, I got this Fender Stratocaster. I guess I am going to try to replicate it.
Yeah.
He told me he had a Fender Strat, and it was for sale. So the next day I go over to his house with my mom, of course, and he pulls out.
You're
this
12
guitar.
when this happens.
Yeah, I was like 12 or 11 or something. Like
That's
I'm
kind of
really
it's
young.
kind of a weird. Like I couldn't imagine going over to a 12-year-old and saying these things.
Well, he just saw us play the set, you know. So I mean, he's like, you know. But the weirder thing about it was that it was a few $1,000, which I didn't have because I am 12. Like I got like my $50 Christmas money. Like I don't have anything, you know.
Yes.
But I saw this guitar and I fell in love with it. It had the most flamey maple neck ever, and it was just lightweight and it was just beautiful guitar. But I let it go for a few years, probably about 8 years, because I couldn't afford it. One day, I remember this guitar kind of out of the blue because I'm talking with another buddy of mine about some guitars, and I'm thinking there's no way that this guy's still alive because he was in his 80s when I met him that first time, and this is about almost 10 years ago.
Sure.
I still have his phone number, so I call him up. What do you know? He's still alive, and he lives walking distance from my house. He moved, and he lives close to me. I'm like, no way. So I walk over, right? Spend the whole day with the guy, right? Talking about the guitar. He showed me his polka record from the 60s.
His polka records. That's so
like
funny.
All this cool stuff. You know, he told me that the guitar was refinished by a Guild employee who was his friend, which actually makes sense because he's an Italian guy, and Guild was run by a lot of Italians and kind of in the 80s. Like, the story checks out. So bring the guitar home because now I'm older. Now I have a couple of grand to spend on a guitar. And a few weeks go by, and my grandfather comes over to my house, and he sees the guitar, and he's like, wait a second. I know that guitar. You bought it from Filippo. I used to play with him in Italy in around 1968, 1967. That was his guitar. And I'm...
Oh, my God.
This guitar has found its way back to me. Now, another week or two goes by. It's the morning of the very first King Falcon gig, and I find out that Filippo passed. And, I mean, it was really sad. He lived a good life. I think he was about 90, you know? But it was sad.
This whole story is crazy.
Yeah, it was sad, man. And I definitely feel like it's my responsibility to be the caretaker of that guitar, and that's one of those that I'll never part with because it's just kind of so intertwined with my life. But yeah,
let me see the guitar, man. Is it handy?
No, I have it in another room, but it's
okay.
I can send you a picture of it. It's a 57 Strat, refinished, but it's a Sunburst, and it's a hardtail, which is interesting. It doesn't have a whammy bar.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one that's most special, and that's why I always like to reconnect with owners because you never know what a guitar meant to them. You know, like that guy's whole musical life is represented on that one piece. You know, so if anything happens to it, I mean, it's like that guy's whole existence is kind of erased, and that's how I feel. Like after I pass someday, all these guitars are going to kind of go on to carry the story. So
right, that's so. Did your grandfather get to hook up with the guy?
Not really.
No.
You know, I think that last time they saw each other was probably 2001, 2002. So I was only like 1 or 2 years old at that point.
Okay. What a great story, man. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. You said we talked earlier. You grew up in Whitestone?
Yes.
In Queens? What was your childhood like?
Still here.
Still there on Whitestone. What was your childhood? Whitestone's a great area, dude. It's perfect to live in the city, man. Cool. What was growing up there like?
What was growing up here like? So the cool thing about Whitestone is that everybody here's a car guy. So as I grew up, I learned that that's not the case everywhere. Like as I walk around Whitestone, I mean, it's like everybody's dad has a Chevelle, had like a Camaro, there's a guy on the corner
changing the oil on the weekends.
Totally. There's a guy on the corner who collects Volkswagens. He's got a bus. He's got a whole bunch of old Beetles from the 60s. And that really had a huge impact on me because I'm a massive car guy.
Okay.
Like, I just like if I wasn't a guitar player, I'd want to be a race car driver. Like that would be my dream job. You know, it would be race car driver first, rock star second, and then like astronaut third. You know, I've just always loved cars, and I think a lot of that has to do with just my upbringing and everybody around here. Like when the new Lamborghini would come out, it was the biggest thing at school, and it was weird for me when I went to college and I had this like kind of bigger group of people that everybody didn't give a shit about stuff like that. You know, like it was weird.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Fordham in.
Oh yeah, right across. Yeah, I know exactly where that is. I grew up not far from there. Yeah, I know exactly.
You're by the Rose Hill one. That's where you were, right? Because you were from the Bronx.
Yes. Oh, there's another campus.
There's one in Midtown Manhattan, and then there's one.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've been to both. But the one in Midtown Manhattan's a little more artsy. So.
Oh my God!
You're not going to get
the Bronx
a whole lot
is like hundreds of years old. I think probably.
Yeah.
It's been around
but in the Midtown one, you're not going to get a whole lot of artsy theater kids who are gearheads and want to get covered in oil and stuff like that. So
right, totally,
different world for me.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's so funny. Yeah, Fordham's a great school. You're very bright. I mean, listen to you. I'm like, God, you must be well read because usually people that read a lot are pretty, their speaking is more intelligent.
I have read a book or two in my day.
Yeah, you could tell, man.
I remember one time I was a kid and I was on a tour and with a bunch of other kids, and one of the tour guide asked all the kids if they liked reading, and I was trying to be cool, and I was like, no, books are stupid. My mom just kicked me.
Yeah, now it's like, yeah, I like reading. It's like it's totally the opposite. Nobody reads though anymore. It's kind of sad.
Yeah,
it's not a lot of people read. I mean, they read like Instagram posts, or TikTok or something like that, but they don't read books, which is sad. So let me ask you this. You have no frame of reference personally as experience goes as today's music business as yesterday's music business. But for you, what is the biggest challenge of navigating your way through today's music business, which is what you know? Sure.
The biggest challenge for me is that everybody wants all sides of you all the time. Like I'm a performer and I make music. So when I'm in my element doing my thing, you see me on stage or you hear the things that I've recorded. That's when I'm like really doing the thing that I'm meant to do. We got to make TikToks and stuff like that all the time.
I'm like social media.
I'm like not a TikTok guy, there's just a lot of other times where you have to perform things that feel very unnatural, and I'm a very introverted guy. I don't really let everybody kind of into my life so much. But being a public figure, you're kind of motivated to do that. So the key is how much of it do you show so that people feel like they know you versus keeping your own private space, and that's the thing that
totally get that
struggles with. And that's something that didn't exist because, with Led Zeppelin, they came out, you saw them, and then they got back on the plane and did whatever drugs they did, and nobody knew about it. And then you get to the next place and whatever. So it wasn't like this constant,
and nobody expected to know either. It was like, I don't care what they're.
Mystery was part of it, but now people feel like they're entitled to kind of your whole life. And that's weird for me.
Interesting that you say that because I feel the same way, and I know that if I was more active on social media, say more active in a way of like sharing more of my personal opinions, which I never do because I don't really give a shit about my opinions or my opinion, like I don't really feel like what you're just saying. I'm not interested in putting that out there. I don't really care what anybody thinks of me.
I like to that my most controversial opinion is that 70s Gibsons are the best. That's my most controversial opinion.
Great. Yeah, but you know what? The more controversial you get, they love it. Like, it's funny, man. My wife watches, when she unwinds from work, she'll watch like reality TV and I'll walk out there and I'll be like, babe, how do you watch this? And then I'll look at it and I'm like, oh my God, there's just so much drama. These people have like no fucking coping skills, like anything. And I'm like, okay, I get it now because this is such good TV because everybody wants to see the mess of everyone else's life, I guess.
Everybody likes rubbernecking the dumpster fire.
Yeah, I guess, man. It's really weird, but I really appreciate that you said that because most people are, most musicians I talk to that are older feel the same way, but it's interesting to hear you're a guy that grew up with social media and you're like, yeah, it's still, I'm doing it for work, not for...
You know what? Because that's not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up to be a
Yeah.
TikToker. I didn't sign up to make
Yeah.
reels. I signed up to write songs, and hopefully people like them and are affected by them. It's just that
Yes.
you have to play this whole marketing game in a way that you kind of don't elsewhere.
Yeah.
But that's where everybody's attention is now. So it's like if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that, man. Thank you so much. That's a very honest answer. Let's talk about your gear for a minute. You have a really nice collection of vintage guitars already. What
Thanks.
is your go-to guitar right now, and what other two would round out your top three? And also, if the Trini isn't in your top three, can you tell me about it anyway?
Sure, yeah. So I have two separate sets of guitars. I have guitars that go on the road, and I have guitars that do not go on the road. And the reason that the guitars behind me don't go on the road is not because I don't love them. It's just because some of them are so historically valuable that if anything happens to them, this green Firebird that's back here, it's a 1965 non-reverse Firebird 5 in Kerry green. As far as I'm aware, it is the only one in existence. There's only one in that color. It was at the Songbirds Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee before I got it. There might be another one, but as far as I have looked, and I have a pretty wide network, I have not been able to find another one. So I'm going to tentatively call it one of one.
How did you get that guitar if it was at the museum?
That's a long story. I've done some business with the guy from the museum, and we came to an agreement on this guitar.
That's cool.
I'll maybe tell you off camera, but it's a funny story. But anyway, so I got that guitar. If I even put one ding in it, now I have put a ding in a piece of Gibson history.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like if I sweat on it, now I just like sweat on Gibson. So I kind of feel guilty with some of these guitars doing that. Like my favorite sounding guitar is the one next to it. It's a 1955 Gibson Les Paul, and it came from the daughter of the original owner, a woman by the name of Doris King. And cool that her last name was King and the band is King Falcon, but also King is just like a blues last name as hell, which is awesome.
Totally.
But she was a little old lady, and she never really stood up playing it, so the whole back of the guitar is perfect. Doesn't have any belt rash in it or anything. So just some of these guitars, I would kind of feel really guilty. And I'm not Joe Bonamassa, where I have like a tech who follows me that I can just hand my guitars off to him and he takes care of them. Yeah. So these don't tour mostly for that. Also, I don't want them to get stolen. That would be great. Of course.
There's a million reasons to not take those things on the road.
Yes. But the guitars I do take on the road, so I have three that come on the road with me. My number one is a 1975 Gibson Flying V. And the reason I like that is because, huge controversial opinion here for any guitar player who knows about vintage stuff. The Gibson necks that are three pieces with the volute are the best necks that Gibson ever made. I don't care who says what, and I have read that in 50s, several articles. 60s stuff here to prove it. Here's why. That Les Paul behind me, the 55 Gold Top, sounds great. If it's cold out tomorrow, everything moves. If it falls off the stand, it's now broken. Right. If I'm going to go on tour for 6 months and bring a guitar through all the different humidity, all the different climate changes, having a neck that's stronger because it's three pieces of opposing grain and has a reinforced headstock joint is just more practical. And as long as you have a good set of pickups, I promise you that nobody is going to notice the difference when you're playing through all your gear, a compressor, front of house. Like, nobody's going to hear that the neck is three pieces instead of one. You know,
absolutely. No one's even going to be thinking about that. And if they are, they should be like studying something online, not at a concert.
Yeah, like I know that Eric Johnson can hear the difference between batteries, but I don't think that your average person can, especially not in that setting, and not after 2 drinks anyway. So and by the way, the 75V sounds amazing. It's an amazing guitar. The only thing that would sound better would be a 1958 V, but that's like an $800,000 guitar. So I don't have that money. I'm not going to tour with that guitar, even if I did. So that's my number one. And my number 2 and 3 are basically variations of that guitar. My number 2 is a 1974 Les Paul Deluxe. It's wine red. It's got P90s in it, and I bought it from a pawn shop.
It's got P90s. Did they put those in? Because that's usually the mini humbuckers.
Normally would have had mini humbuckers.
Yeah.
But I prefer the P90s, and somebody took them out and put P90s in, which is better.
Great.
And my third guitar is a 1970 SG, also 3-piece neck with the volute. That guitar has had some serious. There's random holes under the pick guard, and it's got new pickups in it, and just like all this stuff. I love somebody broke off the strap pin and just like re-drilled another one. So yeah, I mean that's those are the kind of guitars you want to tour with because they don't get in the way of the show. You know, like if I jump and I spin around and like something happens, whatever, it's the show. You know, like I put a big fat scratch in that Les Paul as soon as I got it, and it broke my heart. But now every scratch that's in it, I'm like, oh yeah, that one's from Cleveland, that one's from Minnesota, like that. That's like,
cool.
That one's from Nebraska. Like I just remember the gigs that they happened at.
That's like your work tools. Those are your work tools.
Yeah. So you asked about the Trini Lopez.
The Trini, man. Yeah, that is just like.
Okay. So this is a cool guitar, and this is the one that I really. This wasn't my first vintage guitar, but this was my first custom color vintage guitar. So it's a 1966 factory black Trini Lopez, and from what I understand, they only made 20 in black.
Oh.
And there are only 3 that have the Bigsby. Now, I think this one, the Bigsby on this one was dealer added, so it's not quite original from the factory, but it's a period Bigsby, and it's been on there a long time.
That's awesome.
The only thing about this guitar is the back of the neck has been oversprayed because there was a couple dings and the previous owner wanted to get them out. But other than that, it's a fully original guitar in every aspect, and I wanted one with the Bigsby. So the fact that there's only two others out there with the Bigsby means you can't really be too picky. But yeah,
what kind of pickups are in there?
So these are the they're called patent numbers. So obviously they're humbuckers, but just in different. Hey,
my little kitten's here. Sorry.
Hi. Thanks for saying hello.
Come on, Hazel.
So the first generation of humbucker pickups, I'm sure you're familiar with, are called patent applied for pickups.
Yeah.
The patent number is basically the same thing. But it's when they actually got the patent, and like there's a couple of little differences with like, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what the difference is, but they're minute. They're basically the same pickup. So
sonically, they're very similar, though, aren't they?
Sonically, they're really close. The biggest difference about this guitar is that it doesn't have the stop bar tailpiece like so this one has the Bigsby. In late 60s, they all have this trapeze setup thing, and that's why I wanted the one with the Bigsby, is because you get a little more sustain. But the distance here being wider than the regular stop tail being here, kind of lose a little bit of sustain. Yeah, and that's why jazz guys prefer them, because you get more attack and less sustain, which is kind of better for jazz.
Sure.
But as far as I'm aware, they did not make any Trini Lopez's that had a stop bar. So
it's a beautiful guitar, man. Really beautiful.
Thanks, man. Yeah, this is one of my favorites. I love this, and this is also in the music video for Cadillac.
Oh, cool. Let me ask you this: do you have another deluxe with the mini hums?
I don't. I'll be honest. I hate to say it, but I just kind of don't like how they look.
What do they sound like? Because I had a guy. Oh, sorry, man. Come on. Sorry, I decided to let her in. Maybe that's a bad idea. I had a guy on my show, Jeff Carlisi. He's the guy, one of the founding members of 38 Special, and he did all his solos on that Les Paul Deluxe. And he was he loves it, and I was just curious what it sounded like, because I'm sort of interested in trying one or looking around for one, but I just don't know what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean they sound great. They're kind of somewhere in between a P90 and a humbucker. They're maybe a little bit less bitey than a humbucker. A lot of people compare them to the Firebird pickup, but I'm not sure that that's totally accurate. Because the Firebird pickup is a little bit more like a Les Paul and a Tele pickup mixed together.
Okay.
So again, I haven't spent too much time. Like, I haven't recorded with one, and
sure.
I always feel like I don't exactly know where it sits in the mix until I hear it recorded the same way. Because how it feels in the room by yourself is always very different versus how it feels in the mix. Like sometimes I play a guitar and I'm like, oh, this sounds great, and then as soon as I play it with a band, it gets lost. the one thing I'll say about minis is that if you're coming from a Strat or something like that, you'll definitely get a huge push, you know, in kind of the mid range.
Right.
But yeah, I don't own one. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time with mini humbuckers, but they are cool.
Cool, because thanks for sharing that. I don't know what, I have not heard them at all, but you got some Is there one there that like the 57 Strat is the if there's a fire, that's the one you're pulling out?
Yeah, well, actually, so I have two 57 Strats. The refinished one is downstairs, and I have an original one sitting behind me.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that, and honestly, probably that green Firebird, just because of how rare it is.
Yeah, it's beautiful guitar.
One of the more recent guitars that I got is bring it down. It's this guy here. So this is a 1965 Jazzmaster, and this is in Sherwood Green. I have been after this color for about 4 years. It is one of the rarest Fender colors of all time. As far as I'm aware, I think they only made 6 Jazzmasters in this color. How
do you find that out? You're like so wired into this, man. How do you get this intel?
It's not 100% right because there's no shipping totals for Fender. The only year that we get shipping totals for Fender is 1966, and this is a 1965. What I'm going based on is the ones that have been publicly for sale kind of in the last like 15 years. So there could be 10, there could be 4 that we haven't seen. There could
Michael,
be...
hang on one second. Let me get rid of this cat because she's going to be... I really apologize. My wife just poked her head in her. Here you go, back.
Sure.
So sorry, man.
All good.
So you're going based on the ones that have been publicly for sale. The ones that have kind of
publicly sold. Also, just looking at the chronology, like the earliest one that I was able to find has a non-matching headstock, so it doesn't have the green headstock. It has a slab board, and it has gold hardware, and I believe that one dates to 5960. And kind of just throughout the years, you can see 1 or 2 during every year, and this one being a 65 is really the end of the run. So through that time, I've only been able to find 6 that have ever been offered for sale. And this,
that's amazing.
Chronologically would be number 6 of the 6. So I don't want to say for sure, but this may be one of the last Sherwood Green Jazzmasters that was originally produced.
So let's talk about that guitar. What prompted you to buy that? Like something had to get into your head and said, I need one of these, or that really turns me on. What?
So yeah, I mean, it's my favorite color. I love green. Green has always been my favorite color. Like British racing green. Like if I was a bajillionaire, quadrillionaire, I would have a whole heap of cars that would be dark green with like tan interior. That's my just favorite old guy color combination.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a Sherwood Green Strat. I know that there's a couple of them, but they are probably quadruple, maybe 5 times the price. And I haven't even seen one for sale publicly anywhere. I mean, they're impossible to find. I've seen a couple Jaguars, but to be honest, I'm actually not a huge Jaguar fan, even though these 4 Jags would not give you that impression.
Yeah.
I much prefer the Jazzmaster.
Right.
And a Telly is also kind of out of the question because custom color Tellys are just impossibly rare. And green is like the most impossibly rare color, second only to pink. So the Jazzmaster was kind of the one that naturally presented itself, and I looked for one for a long time. I almost bought this one a couple years ago, but then it got this exact guitar, but then it got sold, and then it sort of found its way back, and everybody in the community knew that I was looking for this one. So when it was available again, before it was even listed, I got the first phone call, and I was like, I'll be there in an hour. Done.
That's so you say in the community, you mean like locally in New York where you're no, online?
No. I got a call from a buddy of mine in Florida that the guitar was in Nashville. This is a global community. I've got a guy in Australia I deal with. I've got a guy in London I deal with. A couple guys in California. Like the guitar community is there's really only a handful of guys that know where all this shit is, and they watch it like hawks. So it's crazy.
That's pretty cool. Like, what initially turns you on about it? Is it the aesthetics, or is there something about a particular guitar sound? Because you've got like different flavors of every guitar pretty much.
Sure. So I like to use them all for recording. So I like to make sure I don't have too many of one thing. Now I know I have a lot of Jags and Jazzmasters, but they are all different years and they all have very different specs from each other. So I have reasons for having each one of them. But what originally drew me to vintage guitars in general is just the fact that every time you see them, they're unapproachable. They're behind glass. You know, it's like they're just right there, but you can never touch them. So ever since I was a kid, it was one of those things where I was like, you know what? I'm no longer is there going to be a piece of glass between me and those guitars. Like, I'm going to do whatever I got to do, even if it's putting myself in financial jeopardy, which I have. I sure have. To make it happen so that I can have some of these guitars and freaking use them. Like my students play these guitars sometimes. Like if I have students that are getting really good, I'll bring them in and be like, here, you play a 1962 Jaguar. You ever played one before? So
that's pretty cool.
And for me, it was also really important because that's how my teacher kind of got me started. I remember when I was 12 or 13 years old, my guitar teacher, Byrne, he came into the lesson one day and he brought his 1961 Strat. And I was just like taken by it. I was like, oh my God. And it had been refinished. I mean, he's got different pickups in it. Like it was rode hard and put up wet. But just the way that it felt like an old baseball glove that was perfectly worn in. I mean, it just kind of took me. And ever since then, I was like, I need to have vintage guitars because, you know, it's like if you're a car guy, driving a new car with boost and traction control and screens and heads up display, it's not the same as driving like a 1963 Ferrari with just V12 and like a steering wheel, you know? Like there's nothing better than that. And again, I can't afford one of those either, but even if I could get as close to drive like a, I don't know, like a freaking Camaro from the early 90s or something like that, just something that feels real, you know? And I think just with the manufacturing processes getting so perfect now that it takes some of the soul out, you see these old guitars, like check this out. Have you ever actually seen the finish on a 57 Strat up close? It looks like garbage.
Never.
It looks like shit. Look at this. It looks like a child did that with a paintbrush.
Yeah, it does.
But it's original, and that's how it was. And you can imagine like Leo and his little, you know, elves working in the magic Santa shop putting these things together. Like there's a human element to them, and everyone is different like a snowflake. That to me is what makes them special, and that's what drew me into them. And then on top of that, finding out that like the colors are a rarity on top of that, I was like, well, you got to get the whole rainbow. And it became a slippery slope from there, man.
No, but it's nice to see how much genuine joy you have in these, man. It's really, really nice to see that.
Thanks. I appreciate it, and I like most sharing it with people. I like when people come and they appreciate them for what they are, and when you put a guitar in somebody's hand and they're like, oh my God, I never thought I would hold one of these, you know, that's my favorite.
Yeah, I would. That's what I was thinking as you brought it out. That 55 gold top, is the neck like incredibly thick?
No, not too thick. It feels, honestly, hate to say it, but they do a pretty good job with the reissues getting the neck shapes right.
Okay.
The thing that they don't get right are the P90s. They do a great job with humbuckers, man. Like a lot of the modern PAFs sound better than original ones, but P90s, they just don't make them like they used to because they have such a delicate nature. And I'll tell you what, maybe this is just coming from a guy who can't afford a burst because they're $500,000, but I like P90s better. And these guitars are rarer than bursts. If anybody tries to tell you that the burst was like a failed experiment, it's not true. They sold 1,500 of them. They were mega expensive, and they made them for 3 full years, 58, 59, 60. The only reason they're so expensive is because there's one guy who owns 350 of them.
Who?
What's his name? He's a CEO of something. Dirk Ziff.
I don't know. Of what? Interesting.
Look up Dirk Ziff. He owns like 300 plus bursts. And that's the reason they're worth so much money, is because one guy who's already a billionaire.
So he's hogged the whole market.
They make 1/3 as many of these in this configuration as they did bursts. And the only reason everybody wants a burst is so they can look like Jimmy Page.
You know what, man? I love P90s myself, and I have a guitar with a couple of Lawler P90s in particular, and I have never played a set of pickups that I enjoy as much as those, man. I agree. It's so versatile.
Goldilocks between the two.
Yeah, so versatile, man. Well, thanks for sharing that, man. I really, that was a joy to see how happy you are. Have you ever sold a guitar you wish you can get back?
No, there's a lot that usually goes into me selling a guitar. I marinate on it for a while. I almost sold one, but I backed out at the last minute. The rarest guitar that I sold that I don't feel bad selling, well, I traded it. It was a 1978 ES 240, and if you don't know what that is, it's basically an ES 335, but it was a prototype that they made with a coil tap, and officially they only made 3. Wow. Mine was the third one of the 3, and it was beautiful, but the neck pickup didn't sound that good. And I didn't want to modify it because it was a Gibson prototype, so I ended up trading it to a guy who was a Norland collector. I mean, 70s Gibsons are like his thing. So he was more than happy to have it, and it was going to just kind of be on display. He traded me an 84 Les Paul Custom for it. Kind of got screwed on that deal because it had some modifications that I didn't figure out until later, and I learned a lot from that. But I traded that for the 1970 SG that I now gig with.
So it was good. It came out in the end. Everything worked out.
Yeah, it came out all right, but that was the only guitar that was like mega rare that I sold. A lot of other things were guitars that I sold so I could buy the ones behind me that were kind of like above. You know,
how often do you get a new guitar or trade guitars?
It depends, man. Like, sometimes I'll go a year without buying one, and then sometimes I'll buy 3 in one shot. Like these Jags, like these 3 right here, I bought at the same time.
From the same person?
Sort of. So I'll tell you the story real quick. Did you hear about Robbie Z?
I know that name. Somebody has told me.
Maybe you heard about.
Oh, I read it in your bio.
Yeah, so maybe you heard about the massive guitar theft.
I read it just in your bio when I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Robbie Z, right, he had a whole bunch of these guitars stolen from him at the beginning of 2020. All custom color offsets, about 200 of them, all stolen. Long story on that. You can go look it up on YouTube if you want to hear it. But basically, this red one, it's a 1965 Dakota Red Jaguar. It was his, and there's a video of him like on YouTube with it, but I didn't see it at that time. Somebody sold me the guitar, and then as soon as I bought it, I get a text message from another buddy of mine because it's a small community, and he's like, "Hey, dude, that's a stolen guitar." I was like, "No way, you're kidding me!" So I find Robbie Z. I reach out to him. I'm like, "Hey, dude, I think I bought one of your guitars." So he writes me back, and he goes, "Well, luckily for you, the guy you bought it from me." So
so that wasn't one of the stolen ones.
I was like, "Oh, thank God." He's like, "However, I just got 2 more back that were stolen, and I'm going to sell them if you want them." And I'm like, well, shit. So that's how I got the blue one and the gold one.
So funny.
And I actually did buy another one of his stolen guitars at some point, but it was stolen. So I sent it back to him, and I had to go through a whole long fight of getting my own money back. But
did you get it?
He had so many guitars that somehow I just keep running into them.
Did you get your money back at least?
I did. It took me about a month. But it was
that really sucks.
It did because it was expensive, but it was a 1966 foam green Jaguar, and it had dots and binding on the fretboard. So I mean, incredibly rare. Joe Bonamassa has one, and I owned it for about 16 hours before I found out it was stolen and sent it back.
Well, it was very cool of you to do that, man.
Well, I know the guy, so I mean, it would have been pretty messed up of me for to just hang on to his guitar. And he's a nice dude. I mean, he I sent him a T-shirt and all that, and he sent me a real nice thank you. So we got a good relationship.
That's good, man. Mike, tell me your top 3 Desert Island discs, just for this moment, because that obviously changes.
Okay, Currents by Tame Impala. Can't Buy a Thrill. Steely Dan.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know, maybe Dark Side. Tried to avoid that one, but it's hard, man. It's just such a great album.
Yeah, that's my number 1 for sure. It's funny, I remember when I was a kid, that series of Steely Dan records was so popular. I remember taking the train to school and having my Walkman on there, listening to that record. And they're kind of like a New York band. They're not from the city, but they're just from outside the city, so it was really like a cool thing. It's like listening to Simon Garfunkel back in the day, when you're on the train or something.
Yeah.
All right, tell me one event, personal, not musical, that took place in your life. If this thing hadn't happened, you wouldn't be the person you are today.
That's a good question. I guess the easy answer would be to say my dad making fun of me and for not playing Guitar Hero or for playing Guitar Hero too much.
That's funny.
Oh man, I'm not sure. That's tough. You know, seeing Avril Lavigne when I was 8 years old. That was my first concert ever. And I was a big fan of the song Skater Boy because I wanted to learn how to skateboard, and I was really into the Tony Hawk video games and all that. And I think in my little kid brain, that was the moment where I was like, I'm gonna be a rock star, or I'm gonna be in this world of like alternative people, you know, like doing skateboarding and all that shit. I never really learned how to skateboard, but I learned how to play guitar. But that was the moment that I was like, wait a second, this is something cool.
Who was her guitar player then? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Yeah, interesting. What do you like most about yourself, man?
Oh, that's a tough one, man.
It is a tough question. You're a super likable guy, by the way. I mean, you're easy as hell to talk to, and you're bright, man. That's like two really like good tick boxes to tick off, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I fancy myself as the kind of guy who, if you're a friend of mine, I will put myself at great discomfort for you. All my friends know that if they need something at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll probably answer the phone.
That's nice.
And I think that's just a really important thing for kind of everybody to do, because otherwise it's really easy to be alone in life. You know what I mean? You got to have a couple people who will go through the shit for you. And I just want to be a guy who can do that for the people close to me as well.
That's kind, man. You have any hobbies outside of music?
Working on my car, man. That's my biggest thing. So I've got
what do you drive?
I've got a 1999 Mustang GT. It was my dad's.
Very cool car.
Which is funny because I'm also a 1999 model. That's when I was born. And if you think about it, imagine this. My dad, like his wife is about to pop a kid, and he's like, I'm gonna go buy a freaking Mustang. And the funny thing is, if you met my dad, it makes no sense. He's the most pragmatic guy. He's like not a sports car guy, but for some reason he had a lapse in judgment in 99, and he bought that car, and I never let him sell it. So when I was 16, he gave me the keys, and that's been my car.
I think it's really cool that you have that car. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the coolest car, not the fastest car, but there's pictures of me as a baby in it with my dad, and he looks way younger.
Yeah.
And someday I'll pass it down in the same way, and I think that's cool.
Well, I'm sure as a dad myself, I can tell you right now that when your dad sees you pulling up in there, I'm sure it's like means a lot to him, you know, to have those sort of memories together, man. So that's cool.
Yeah, he likes to joke with me and be like, "Oh, you got to sell that old thing." But every time I threaten to actually do it, he starts getting cold feet. He's like, "Whoa, hey,
yeah, I bet. Hell yeah." Mike, toughest decision you ever had to make, or most difficult thing you ever had to do?
Well, this may be a good time to talk about the two guys in the band.
Yeah, let's talk. Definitely.
So when stuff hits a point where it starts getting serious, people start getting scared, because when you fail, you land back at home. That's where you end up. But when you succeed, you end up somewhere very different and scary than you were before, with a whole bunch of new responsibilities, and your life is different. So after we got the record deal, and after we got a manager, which was the big thing, that manager kind of sat us down and was like, look, your life is going to change. I mean, you guys are going to be on the road 3-4 months out of the year, and just like, you know, it's going to be a big commitment. You guys got to make sure you're ready for that. And I think the reality of that settled in, and I think that the other guys were just not ready for that. Now,
interesting.
It comes out in other ways.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like anybody actually came out and said, "Oh, I'm not ready for that."
Okay.
But that was kind of the general sense that I got, is that, you know, there's a massive sacrifice that's involved with being in a band and living on the road and do all this stuff. And I think the reality of that just kind of hit the other two guys at the same time. And they were like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. They were also a little bit older than me. I'm 25. They're both 30. So I think at 30, you kind of have a life decision that you need to make.
Yeah, that's interesting though. But that opportunity is like, you know, you finally have it, you know?
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, I don't want don't want to harp too much on anything negative, but I
Sure.
could say for one that for James, I saw the writing on the wall for a minute. I know what he wants to do is just have a kid and settle down, and that's it.
Okay.
So he's pretty much completely retired from music.
Sure.
It was sudden, and it was tough because he and I mean, we did the Canaries together. We have worked together in bands for about 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, it's not super amicable. Like we haven't really spoken to each other, but it's more because of the way that it happened. Like he kind of always has a little bit of a crass edge to him. He kind of just came to me and was like, "I'm done. That's it." And that was the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So, that the 12 hours that ensued after the guys in the band had quit were really hard for me because here we were, like, we're talking about going on the road for 3 months this year, moving the band forward, and now it's like, wait a second, now it really is just me. I mean, it kind of always was. Like, I was the primary songwriter. Like, I book all the gigs. Like, I always did everything. But
you know what I noticed though on your credits, I was surprised because I read that you're the prime, but everybody had credit, songwriting credit.
Yes. So I always wanted to make sure that it was even. So I split everything with those guys. Now
that was incredibly cool. I mean, look, even though royalties aren't today what they used to be, that's incredibly fucking generous and non-existent.
Tom got credit for songs that we wrote before he joined the band.
Yeah. That was
so I mean,
yeah.
It was one of those things where I really wanted to make sure that we went into everything fair. And it's tough because it's one of those things where you feel like no matter how much you do, it can kind of come back to bite you later when people are like, "That's it, I'm done." I'm not.
Note to self: keep my credit next time.
But we had already kind of gotten so much momentum with King Falcon, and people saw that we were doing so much that I'll tell you this: James quit, and 12 hours later, I had fully replaced him because I had gotten a phone call from a friend of mine. And he was like, "Hey man, I heard about it," which was crazy. I already heard about it. He's like, "I just want you to know, I already know all the songs. I've been playing bass for 12 years. I love this band. And if you don't have a van, I have 2 that we can go on the road in." And
oh my God.
Like, "You're in, dude."
You're in.
So there was like,
wow.
So James left, and I was so upset when he left that I drove home in our tour van, by the way, at like 90 miles an hour, and I got pulled over, and I almost lost my license. And the cop saw that I was having a bad night. And keep in mind, if I had lost my license, it would have been the end of the tour.
Yeah.
He saw I was having a bad night, and he was like, "I think you just need to get home, kid, and you need to just like get your head on straight." And the next day, like, all these good things kept happening to me. And that's when I really became
that's nice.
That if you just won't take no for an answer and you just get out there and you just keep doing it, no matter what happens to you, you're going to be all right and you're going to figure it out. That was the moment that, like, I don't super believe in too much stuff from the universe, but if I did, that was the universe saying, "Here you go, keep going."
Yeah.
So that was the most difficult 12 hours for me, which was when I really thought I was by myself. And then I was like, wait a second, I'm not. There's a lot of people who believe in this, and there's a lot of people who see the potential in this.
That's nice. That's nice. So now you're still looking for a drummer.
Yeah, we're still looking for a drummer. I have a couple people who we've been auditioning and stuff, but I just don't want to settle for a drummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got to be somebody who is good, knows what's up, but also has that fire that's like, you know what? If it doesn't come to me, I'm gonna grab it by the throat. That's what makes this work. Like our new bass player Joe, he was like, "There's no way I'm not gonna be in this band." Like, there's a spot for me, and I'm gonna do absolutely everything to make sure I get it. And that's the kind of thing that's how you move this forward. Like, even with Tom, with our old drummer, not to go around saying stuff, but our first big opening spot was for a guy called Des Rocks. Maybe you've heard of him.
No, sorry.
Check him out. I mean, he opened up for the Stones, for Muse. Our first time opening up was going to be in the middle of Tom's vacation, and I sent him a text. I was like, "Dude, so exciting!" And he wrote me back. He was like, "Bro, that fucking sucks, dude. I got." And he didn't come to the show. We got another drummer.
Oh my God.
So I should have known that it was coming, and it kind of always was me pushing it from the beginning.
Yeah.
But it sucks because, like I said, I mean, I gave everything equally, and you kind of expect that from people, and sometimes you don't get it. So
yeah, expectations are tough because if they don't get met, you feel like you get let down, but you're the one who had the expectation. So it's like a kind of you wind up eating humble pie on something that you are, especially if your expectations are based on yourself and how you handle things, and then you expect other people to be like you. Because I used to be like that, and then one of my good friends said to me, he goes, Garber, your problem is you have expectations, and your expectations are based on yourself, and you have no right doing that. And I'm like, you know what? You're 100% right. So
It's true, because I mean, for me, the choice was obvious. The thing that nobody else knew is that I also had a vacation plan that week. My best buddy, who by the way is like a prince in Russia, invited me to Greece to go hang out on a yacht for a week, and I was like, that sounds great, but my band has a gig, I can't go. And my trip was all expense paid, baby. But
Wow.
I still couldn't go because it's like that's not what's important to me. What's
That's not
important
the
to me
priority.
is pushing forward this band that we've been working on forever. So sometimes people are just not made to deal with things that are uncomfortable. Everybody likes to say, hey, I'm in a rock band and we got a record deal and we're going on tour. But when it actually comes time to like, leave your family for a month to go live in a van and like, shit in the gas station bathroom.
Right.
For a month, people like, actually, I don't want to do this. So,
Shit. Well, good for you, man. I'm really happy for you. I bet on you, man, for sure.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Two more questions. Best advice you've ever been given. Who gave it to you?
Oh man, that's tough. Again, kind of more along the same, but it was from my dad, and it was kind of in the midst of all this stuff going on, and he was like, you know what, you come from a whole family of risk takers, and if you take a risk and you commit yourself hard enough to it, it always pays off. And he told me about his father. So my grandfather on my dad's side was a sports journalist in Russia. He was Jewish, so he was pretty. People were pretty prejudiced against him, but he was pretty famous as well. So his thing was that he was writing about how the pursuit of sports is a noble one because it's an athlete dedicating their body and their spirit to the game for glory of like making the game. And what the government wanted him to write was basically that they're doing it for the glory of Russia. Because that's
I was wondering as you said that, how much freedom did a sports journalist have to write back in that day?
He wouldn't change what he wrote, so they basically were like, you got to leave or we're going to kill you. So that's why they came to America, and that's why they were only allowed to come here with nothing, basically. So he came here and he started another newspaper and just kind of kept it rolling and made a life for himself, And same thing happened with my grandfather. I mean, my grandfather was my other grandfather on my mom's side was a touring musician in Italy, and kind of didn't have a whole lot of money, but he was like, whatever, I'm gonna make it happen, and then became well known in Italy and ended up coming to America to play a gig at Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And his wife was 9 months pregnant, and she was like, you're not gonna leave me here. So he came here for the gig, and then my mom was born, and they just stayed. So
that's wild.
My whole life has kind of just been here from people before me taking risks.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing is that if you don't take risks, you'll always stay exactly where you are. And there's going to be discomfort in taking those risks, and you just got to be prepared to deal with that.
That's very cool, man. I really like everything you said there. That was awesome. Last question, Mike. What's the thing in your life that's making you the happiest right now?
It's tough. I've tried not to take too much happiness from things, and a lot from kind of situations and people. I'll say I just went on a really great.
That's what I meant. Like, what's the experience that's going on in your life now?
I just went on a really great road trip with my best friend. He bought a car in Nashville, and it's a stick shift, and he doesn't know how to drive stick shift. So we flew down there, and I taught him how to drive, and we kind of drove back.
Drove back.
And he figured it out sort of on the way, but I don't know. It was great for me to take a little break from all the stuff going on in my life and just like recenter myself with people who I'm really solid with, and take a minute to kind of just reevaluate my inner circle and be reminded of just how solid that is, because it's very easy to have one or two things happen in your life where you're like, wait a second, everything's kind of shaken up, but then you take a step back and you're like, you know what, my car might be broken, all my guitars might not have strings on them, but I got a solid group of people around me who I can trust with my money and with my secrets and not have to worry about it. So.
Right on, man. Awesome. Well, listen, let me tell people where they could find you. First of all, I would love everybody to check out the new King Falcon album. It's really awesome. There's, so many good songs on there. Everybody's down. Rabbit Gets the Gun. My Name Is, Go On. And there's a lot of cool tracks on there. It's a really good, like, bar band rock and roll. Is that fair to say that?
How
would you prefer
quite
it?
so bar band. I think it's I think we're a little bit more arena rock and roll, but hey.
Arena rock and roll. Yeah, let's set the bar higher. Arena rock and roll. I have no problem endorsing that for sure, man. Put it this way, you put the music on, you're gonna get up and move, or you're gonna pick up your guitar and it sounds really good. So I think you'll like it. So please check it out. Also, you could follow the guys or Michael and King Falcon on Instagram. If you go to his website at kingfalconband.com and you purchase the t-shirt, he will actually put it in the envelope with love and send it to you.
Yes.
So please do that and support these guys any way you can. Anything else we could promote, man? Once you find the new drummer, what's touring plans, if any, coming up?
We're going to be across the whole country. So, I mean, you're either going to see, we're always in the Midwest. We always end up there for sure. We're obviously always in New York. I want to see us go out to California because I love sunny California. Sure. But trust me, when there's a tour, which we're looking to be on the road probably about April, May at the latest. But if we're on the road in May, that means something went wrong. I would love to be on the road like second week of April. That would be awesome, and we'll be around the whole country, so you'll have a chance to see us for sure.
Awesome. I hope you'll be down here in Florida for sure.
Hell yeah.
All right, man. Well, everybody, thank you so much for everything, Michael. I appreciate your time. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your socials with your friends. Thanks very much to Michael Rubin for all his time, and it's much success owed and deserved by King Falcon and Michael. You got a great attitude, man. Really, I'm, like I said, third time now, I'm betting on you for sure. And most important, man, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Michael, thank you so much, brother.
Appreciate you.